April 30, 1945, 3:30 p.m. Berlin, Germany. A single gunshot echoes through a concrete bunker, 50 feet beneath the ruined Reich Chancellery. Outside, Soviet artillery shells rain down on what remains of the German capital. Inside, Adolf Hitler, the man who launched a war that killed over 60 million people, lies dead by his own hand. 12 years after seizing absolute power, the Führer's empire has collapsed into a 1,500 square foot underground tomb. This is the minute-by-minute reconstruction of his final days. Adolf Hitler wasn't just a dictator. He was the architect of the deadliest conflict in human history. By early 1945, his Third Reich, which he promised would last 1,000 years, was crumbling. The Red Army approached from the east. American and British forces pushed from the west. German cities burned under relentless bombing. 6 million Jews had been systematically murdered. In camps across occupied Europe, the Wehrmacht, once considered invincible, was collapsing on all fronts. January-March 1945. The collapse accelerates. By January 1945. Soviet forces had crossed into German territory. Hitler refused to evacuate Berlin or negotiate surrender. His health deteriorated rapidly. Tremors in his left hand worsened, likely from Parkinson's disease. His personal physician, Dr. Theodor Morell, administered a cocktail of drugs: methamphetamine, barbiturates, opiates, and over 90 different medications. Hitler's decision-making became increasingly irrational. On January 16, he moved into the Führerbunker permanently, a 2-level underground complex beneath the old Reich Chancellery gardens. The upper level housed staff and guards. The lower level, 20 feet deeper, contained Hitler's personal quarters, a small sitting room, bedroom, study, and a conference room, where he held his final military briefings with generals commanding armies that no longer existed. The bunker was cramped, humid, and claustrophobic. Ventilation was poor. The constant drone of generators mixed with the muffled thunder of artillery above. By March, the bunker population swelled to over 40 people. Staff, guards, secretaries, Hitler's mistress Eva Braun, and propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels with his wife and 6 children. April 1945. The final collapse. April began with catastrophe. The Soviets launched their final assault on Berlin. 2.5 million troops, 6,250 tanks, 41,600 artillery pieces. On April 16, Marshal Georgy Zhukov's forces attacked from the east. Marshal Ivan Konev pushed from the south. The encirclement of Berlin was inevitable. Hitler's military conferences became surreal theater. Generals reported on divisions that no longer existed. He moved phantom armies across maps, ordering counterattacks with troops that had been destroyed weeks earlier. When staff suggested retreat or negotiation, he erupted into screaming rages, accusing everyone of betrayal and cowardice. April 20th. The final birthday. Hitler turned 56. On April 20th, his inner circle gathered in the bunker for a grim celebration. Heinrich Himmler, Hermann Göring, Albert Speer, and other Nazi leaders attended what they knew would be their final meeting with the Führer. The atmosphere was funereal. Hitler appeared hunched, trembling, his left arm hanging uselessly. His eyes were bloodshot, his complexion gray. His staff urged him to leave Berlin for the Berghof, his mountain retreat in Bavaria, where he could potentially negotiate, or at minimum survive. Hitler refused. He would stay in Berlin. He would die in Berlin. After the brief ceremony, most of the Nazi leadership fled the capital. They knew the end had come. April 22nd. The breakdown. On April 22nd, during the afternoon military conference, Hitler suffered a complete psychological collapse. When informed that SS General Felix Steiner's forces, which Hitler had ordered to counterattack, had failed to move, because they no longer existed. As a fighting force, Hitler exploded. He screamed that he had been betrayed by everyone, that the war was lost, that he would remain in Berlin and shoot himself. For the first time, he admitted defeat. His staff stood in shocked silence. Some wept. Hitler's rage subsided into exhaustion. He slumped in his chair and declared, "The war is lost." He ordered his secretaries to begin destroying documents. He dictated his political testament, blaming the Jews and weak military leadership for Germany's defeat, accepting no responsibility himself. April 23 to 28. The betrayals. On April 23, Hitler learned that Hermann Göring, his designated successor, had sent a telegram from Bavaria asking to assume leadership, citing Hitler's imminent incapacitation in Berlin. Hitler perceived this as treason. He ordered Göring's arrest and stripped him of all ranks and titles. On April 28, even worse news arrived. Heinrich Himmler, the SS chief and architect of the Holocaust, had secretly attempted to negotiate Germany's surrender to the Western Allies through Swedish intermediaries. For Hitler, this was the ultimate betrayal. Himmler had been one of his most loyal followers. Hitler ordered Himmler's arrest, though by this point his orders meant nothing. The Nazi hierarchy was disintegrating. These betrayals shattered Hitler's remaining psychological stability. He now trusted no one except Eva Braun, who had voluntarily joined him in the bunker. Despite his orders for her to leave, her loyalty in his final hours appeared to be the only thing that mattered to him. April 29. The marriage and the testament. Shortly after midnight, on April 29, a minor civil official was brought into the bunker to perform a wedding ceremony. Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun were married in the bunker's map room. The ceremony lasted minutes. Eva signed her name, started to write Eva B., then crossed it out and wrote Eva Hitler, born Braun. The witnesses were Joseph Goebbels and Martin Bormann. After the wedding, Hitler dictated his final political testament and personal will. The political document blamed international jury for the war, praised the German people, and appointed Admiral Karl Dönitz as his successor. As President of Germany, the personal will was simpler. He left his possessions to the Nazi Party or to his surviving relatives, and he ordered his body and Eva's to be burned immediately after their deaths to prevent them from becoming a spectacle for the Russian masses. April 30th. The final day. By the morning of April 30th, Soviet forces were within 500 meters of the Reich Chancellery. Artillery fire was continuous. Machine gun fire could be heard at street level. The bunker's inhabitants knew they had hours, perhaps minutes. Around 1 p.m., Hitler ate his final meal with his two secretaries and his cook, spaghetti with light sauce. He said little. His hands trembled as he ate. After lunch, he retreated to his suite with Eva. At approximately 2 p.m., Hitler summoned his staff to say goodbye. He shook hands mechanically, making no eye contact, saying nothing. His face was expressionless. Eva embraced the secretaries and gave them her silver fox fur coat as a gift. Hitler and Eva returned to their private suite. The door closed. Joseph Goebbels, Martin Bormann, Hitler's valet Heinz Ling, and several others waited in the corridor outside. 3:30 p.m. The end. At 3:30 p.m., a single gunshot. The waiting group hesitated, then opened the door. Adolf Hitler sat on a small sofa, his head tilted forward, a gunshot wound to his right temple. A 7.65 mm Walther PPK pistol lay at his feet. Blood pooled on the sofa and dripped onto the floor. Eva Hitler sat beside him, dead from cyanide poisoning. An acrid almond smell, characteristic of cyanide, filled the room. The bodies were wrapped in blankets and carried up 4 flights of stairs to the Chancellery garden. Ling and several SS guards placed them in a shallow shell crater. They doused the bodies With approximately 200 liters of petrol, Bormann lit a makeshift torch and threw it onto the bodies. The fire ignited immediately. As Soviet shells exploded nearby, the group gave a final Nazi salute and retreated into the bunker. The bodies burned for hours, though the fire was incomplete. Soviet forces would discover the partially charred remains on May 2nd. The final hours of the bunker. After Hitler's death, the remaining bunker occupants faced their own choices. Joseph Goebbels poisoned his 6 children with cyanide capsules, then ordered an SS guard to shoot him, and his wife Magda in the garden. Their bodies were also burned, though less thoroughly. Most of the remaining staff attempted to escape through Berlin subway tunnels. Few succeeded. Some were killed by Soviet troops. Others were captured. Martin Bormann disappeared during the escape attempt. His body would be discovered in 1972 during Berlin construction work. The medical reality. Post-mortem examination of Hitler's jaw fragments by Soviet pathologists confirmed identity through dental records. Toxicology found cyanide in Eva's tissues. The gunshot wound to Hitler's head was consistent with self-inflicted injury. There is zero credible evidence Hitler escaped Berlin. The conspiracy theories suggesting survival in Argentina or Antarctica have been thoroughly debunked. The dental identification was conclusive, and multiple witnesses testified consistently about the events of April 30th. The aftermath. Hitler's death changed nothing strategically. Germany surrendered unconditionally on May 7, 1945. The Reich he promised would last a millennium survived exactly 12 years and 3 months. Over 60 million people died in the war he started. 6 million Jews were systematically murdered in the Holocaust he orchestrated. Entire cities across Europe lay in ruins. In his final testament, Hitler blamed everyone but himself, the Jews, the generals, the German people for being too weak. He learned nothing. He accepted no responsibility. Even facing absolute defeat and imminent death, he remained delusional about his role in history's greatest catastrophe. The final truth. Adolf Hitler died as he lived, surrounded by lies, blaming others for his failures, and destroying those closest to him. His 12-year regime murdered millions, devastated a continent, and ended with him shooting himself in a concrete hole while the civilization he claimed to be saving burned above him. The man who promised a 1,000-year empire couldn't survive 12 years. The dictator who sent millions to their deaths was too cowardly to face capture. In the end, he was exactly what he always was, a failed artist turned mass murderer who destroyed everything he touched, including himself. Some stories end. Legends don't. This is CLS.